Welcome back to another episode of Reddit's Dark Side. Find Reddit's Dark Side wherever you find your podcasts or on YouTube. In this podcast, we have 3 stories from the subreddit Let's Not Meet. If you have a wild story that you want to be heard on this podcast, email redditsdarkside@gmail.com. And if you would like to be on the show to tell the story yourself, just include that in the email. And if you enjoy this show, please feel free to leave a review and a rating. Now let's get on to the stories. Late Night Tow Call, posted by Whiskey Score 1 on subreddit Let's Not Meet. Hopefully, this is okay to post here. My story is not one where I was the target of someone's stalking or harassment, but one where I was the guy who was at the right place at the right time, and I'm fairly certain my inadvertent intervention may have saved someone I had never met from, well, who knows what. This was back in 2015 or 2016. I'm a career tow truck driver. At this point, I've been towing cars for most of my adult life and will likely do so until I either retire or die, whatever comes first. At the time, I was working for a pretty small towing company with only 2 employees, and we rotated who was on call each weekend. It was my weekend on call, and it was summer, so with people being out and about late and whatnot, I was pretty busy. Cleaning up accidents, towing broken down cars, both in the city and off the highway. I was fine with it, as I was paid commission at the time, so the more calls I did, the more money I made. So it's Saturday night, now Sunday morning, and it's about 2:30, 3 in the morning. And like I said, I've been busy. I'm tired, a little grumpy, and kind of want to go home when my phone rings. It's an insurance company calling, asking if we could do a tow for one of their customers who has broken down on the side of the highway. The breakdown location they gave me is about 15 miles out of town, which I normally wouldn't do, but the tow destination happens to be a dealership that's just a couple minutes from my apartment. I contemplate rejecting the call, but because I'm paid commission, I figure, screw it. I can run up and grab this car, drop it off around the corner from my place, and then hopefully I can head home and get a couple hours of shut-eye. So I take the call and hop on the highway. The insurance company provided me with the customer's first name, which we'll say was Kara, and gave me a phone number for her. Usually, I try to make contact with people who are on the side of the highway to let them know I'm on my way and give them an ETA. I tried calling her a couple of times, but she doesn't answer. Not unusual. After a short while, I see hazard lights up on the shoulder, so I turn my strobes and start slowing down. As I approach, I notice not only is there a late model car that I'm looking for, but there's another car on scene as well that doesn't have its hazards on, but it's parked in front of the car I'm meant to tow. This is annoying, but not uncommon, as I need to be able to get in front of the disabled car in order to load it up. And sometimes people don't realize that. But because the other car is there, I instead pull up behind both cars. You do this so that, as the tow driver, you're the one that has to make the weird maneuver of pulling off the shoulder and back onto the shoulder, and that the other car just have to drive straight forward on the shoulder. Otherwise, if I pulled out in front, then the other car would have to go around me, and it's unprofessional and unsafe to make them do that. Standing at the trunk of the late model car, which is now directly in front of me, are a man and a woman. The woman is probably in her early 20s and dressed in the 9s for a night out. She's about 5'1" or 5'2". She's wearing a tight, leatherish or something pants, a halter top, long black hair, very pretty. This man is probably around 5'10" and skinny, maybe 150, 160 pounds. Wearing a dark hoodie and dirty jeans, they're standing very close, facing each other. She has her arms crossed, and he's leaning down talking to her. I step out of my truck and approach them both, introduce myself. They separate a few feet, and I look to the woman and say, "Are you Kara?" She nods. I say, "I'm here from her insurance company," and I ask what's going on with the car. Immediately, the man pipes up and says, "Yeah, it's just having some fuel issues. It's an easy fix. Can you just drop it off at the commuter parking lot? I'm gonna fix it for her there." I'm rather annoyed at this because the commuter lot in question is further up the highway, and I'm already 50 miles out of town. Like I said before, I only took this call because it's supposed to be coming back toward my apartment, and I really wanted to go home. Not only that, but in order to change the original tow destination, I'd have to call the insurance company back, wait on hold for who knows how long for a representative, and then let them know the change and try to get them to pay extra for the deadhead miles back home. After unloading, I really didn't want to do any of this. And thirdly, this is a late model car. I'm no mechanic, but It's new enough that whatever is wrong with it is likely covered under warranty. So the dealership is really the best place for it to go. Anyways, explain all this to the guy, but he's not really having it. He gets stern with me, saying something like, "Look man, you just need to take the car where I tell you to take it." We go back and forth on this for maybe 60 seconds, and he's just getting madder. Well, you know what, man? You're not the named insured, Kara is. The easy way to settle this is to ask what she wants to do with the car, and whatever she says is what I'll do. Fingers crossed, she'll want to take the car to the dealership so I can get home sooner. I turn to look at Kara to ask her that question, and I don't see her right away. She's no longer standing where she was just a minute ago, which was slightly off to my right. I continue to see her until I have turned almost all the way around because she's standing directly behind me, and by directly, I mean within an inch of my back, arms still crossed. I look down at her and she locks eyes with me. Her eyes are wide as plates, almost owl-like, and immediately it feels like she's staring into my soul. She didn't say a word, she didn't have to. I took a step back and did what felt like a double take. I looked at him, and then at her, and then at him again, and then back at her. And it slowly started to dawn on me that maybe something isn't right. I asked her, "Do you know this guy?" And she ever so slightly shook her head, no. The expression on her face when I asked her that will be forever burned in my skull. I turned to the guy and was like, "Oh, you gotta go, man." Now, I'm not a tough guy. I'm a total beta male, if there is such a thing, and I don't care who knows it. I have nothing to prove. I'm super averse to confrontation and will run at the first sign of trouble. And I'm not exactly the biggest of guys either. I am, however, what I like to call sturdy, 5'8" and 240 pounds. I have a bit of a gut, but I also have big thighs and broad shoulders, and people are genuinely surprised to find out that I weigh as much as I do, and I think that might have been my saving grace for what happened next. Without a word, the guy starts to move for Kara, and I move to stay in between them. He tries to push me out of the way by shoving me in the chest. Because I believe he underestimated my weight, only pushed me hard enough to make me take a single step back. Immediately, I took the step forward towards him, body checked him, hard as I could, hard enough to completely knock him over, basically onto his ass. Because we rotated during the back and forth pushback, Kara is now in front of me, to my right, somewhat between me and the guy who's trying to scramble to his feet. I reached out and snatched the poor girl up by her waist, spun her towards my truck, and yelled for her to get into the driver's side, and she does so. Turn back to the guy, who's standing up again at this point, and he's breathing hard. He gets right up in my face, but does nothing, just breathes at me. I stare him in the face, and mustering up the best dad voice I can muster, and just say, "You need to go." I'm shaking now, and absolutely terrified. I don't know if he has a weapon. I don't know if he's gonna try to fight me. And I don't know what I would do if he did. Like I said, I'm not a tough guy. I don't know how to fight. I've never been in a fight in my life. What if I get badly hurt? What if I get stabbed? What do I even do now? I just want to go home for fuck's sakes. I wasn't even gonna take this damn call. All of this is running through my head at lightning speed. After probably around 15 seconds or so, which felt like eons, he kind of huffs a bit, smiles on the creepiest smile I've ever seen, and starts to back off, sucking his teeth and rubbing his hands together. He slowly walks backwards a few steps, then makes his way to the front of the car, gets in, and drives off. I stayed motionless, watching him, until I could no longer see his taillights. I got Kara's car loaded up on the tow truck, and as we made our way to the dealership, she told me, through tears, that her car had shut down while she was driving, and she pulled onto the shoulder and called her parents because she was on their insurance. Her parents made the call to the insurance company, who eventually dispatched me to her location. While she was waiting, a bit after she made the call, the guy pulled up in front of her and walked up to her passenger side window to try to talk to her, asking if she needed help, etc. And she told him she was fine, that a tow truck was coming, and that she didn't need help. He persisted, and she tried to tell him off, and eventually tried to roll up the window. Apparently, he stuck his arm in the window and got the door unlocked and opened the door. In fear, she jumped out of the car, leaving her phone inside, and ran to the back of her car and stayed put there because it was in the line of sight of traffic. Apparently, he was pretty lewd with her, and whenever she tried to go back to the car, he would prevent her from getting in it. Several minutes later, I showed up. Who knows what would have happened had the timing been any different. Parents were waiting at the dealership when we arrived, and she told them what had just happened. Her parents gave me a $20 tip, which was all the cash they had on them at the time, and Kara gave me a very tight and clearly heartful hug before I left. I never saw her again. I tell you what, every guy has daydreamed at some point of coming to the rescue of a pretty girl in trouble, myself included. You think you're going to be the hero, that you're going to be the cat's ass. You're going to slay the dragon and get the girl and ride off in the sunset like the king you are. But for me, being in that situation, in the moment, was one of the most terrible feelings I've ever had in my life. Forced into confrontation I didn't want, nor was prepared for, not knowing what to expect from a clearly not well hinged individual. I didn't feel like the cat's ass, and I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a scared little kid encountering a bully on the playground for the first time. If I'm ever in a situation like that, I will never not intervene. I just really hope I don't have to. Thanks for reading. Never That Safe. Posted by Alma Lazone on subreddit Let's Not Meet. Okay, this happened in 2016 when I was a 17-year-old first-year college student in film school. I'm now 22, female. Name is Julia. I lived alone in my first ever apartment. It was really small, but I was really proud of my independence. I never felt unsafe in this apartment for several reasons. There were multiple gates in the residence that needed to be opened through a code. Only the people who lived there knew. My door had 3 different locks, and it was right next to the university, so most people who lived in the neighborhood were college students. Nothing bad had happened ever in the neighborhood before. I've always been very careful with locking the door when I leave my home. I always check twice. I have slight OCD, so this one time, I leave to go to class, and I locked my door, but for some reason, I couldn't get the key out of the lock. It was completely stuck, so I went to get the caretaker of the building to help me. But he wasn't there, and I was getting late for class, so I went to class with the key still in the lock. I took off the keychain first, so it's not too noticeable. When I got home, the caretaker was back, so he came to help me, and we couldn't get it out for 15 minutes, until somehow he did. He told me the lock was damaged, but that I didn't necessarily need to change it, if I only locked it once instead of twice. I just said okay, and that was the end of it. I really wasn't worried because of how safe I felt in this building. Flash forward 2 months later, I was taking out the trash one night around 11 p.m. While on the phone with my sister, I remember telling her that I was taking out the trash. Then, that I would take a shower afterwards before heading to a party. As I previously said, I always lock the door, even just to take out the trash. Because of my lock being damaged, I only locked it once. When I got back to my apartment, I found the door unlocked, which immediately alarmed me. So I went into the apartment and locked the door immediately with 3 different types of locks. When you walk into my apartment, which is just 215 square feet, you have the main room in front of you and the bathroom door immediately to your left. I had left the bathroom door slightly open, enough so I could see a man in my shower turning his back to me. Naturally, when I saw this, I tried to open the door and leave as fast as possible, except my main lock was damaged from 2 months earlier, and I couldn't open it no matter how hard I tried. In this moment, all I could think of was the fact that I had to leave as fast as possible. I jumped out the window without really thinking. I figured it was the only solution, except I lived on the 2nd floor, so I completely smashed my ankles in the landing. I started running whichever way I could, and then I got a little bit further from the building. I looked back, and the man was there at my window, watching me run away. I thought of 2 possible outcomes. Either the man was going to jump and chase me, except I wouldn't get far with my twisted ankles, or he would get scared of the height and be locked in my apartment. Thankfully, he picked option 2. I went to hide in a bush a little further and called the police, who arrived in just 10 minutes because I lived close to the station. They pushed my door open, and the man was just sitting on my couch, holding a kitchen knife, waiting for me to come back. Like, he didn't think I would call the police. They arrested the guy and later told me he had already been arrested for sexual assault, rape, attempted kidnapping, and attempted murder. They also told me how everything had happened. Like I said, it was a very friendly neighborhood with mostly college students, so he got inside the building by other people holding the door for him. He then heard me telling my sister I was going to take a shower, which was why he was waiting for me in the bathroom. He crocheted my lock while I was taking out the trash. He apparently noticed me on the school campus and followed me to my home several times before, succeeding to actually come in. He stayed inside waiting for me because I had recently changed my phone and the previous one was still on the table, so he thought I didn't have a phone with me to call the police. I don't live there anymore, but after that, to get into the building, we all needed identification proving we lived there. Building IDs were created and we had to scam them every time, and it was the only way to go inside the building. Nothing bad happened in the neighborhood after that. It was back to being very peaceful and friendly. Bus robbery, posted by COVID is on subreddit Let's Not Meet. So I used to live in southeast London, and I went to a very terrible secondary school. I just finished my day and was waiting for my bus. I sat on the seat halfway on the left side of the bus. This is important for future reference. I'm peaceful and minding my own business. It's a bright, sunny day, and the bus is quite packed, and everybody looks so disconnected and lost in themselves, myself included. I'm in my own world. Suddenly, this fat white guy, who is ghetto, walks in. It looks like he's by himself, casually walking towards my side, and I have my bag on the opposite seat to indicate basically, don't be sitting there. He sits on the seat rather, promptly, and me being totally ignorant and unaware, just sorta don't pay attention to him. Suddenly, his hand goes into my pocket, and he puts my iPod into his pocket so swiftly. Again, I don't understand my mentality here, so I'm blissfully unaware. I put my iPod back in my pocket so innocently, and then the situation takes a turn for the worse. A guy frantically from the seat behind me appears, and he has a hold of my hood of the coat, and he just looks absolutely evil. He is mixed race, and his eyes look completely black, and I'm guessing he's a mix of English and Iraqi. He is batshit unstable and is threatening to stab me. He is loud and obvious, and the robbery is happening in front of lots of ignorant and indifferent, selfish Londoners. Why nobody said anything is beyond me. All I remember is a black lady looking at me with big, round, scared-looking eyes, but does and says nothing. The guy behind me is doing all the talking. I wasn't even previously aware of this guy. There were also two at the back, monitoring the situation. I actually am calm in this situation. He wants a phone from me. I tell him I don't have a phone. He keeps demanding, and the guy beside him tells him to calm down, but is whispering. The guy behind me is then saying, don't get off the bus, you will get stabbed if you do. He then is demanding money, and I say I don't have much. I give him a few pounds. He still is incredibly unstable, crazy, and all over the place. Seems like a heroin addict or something. Well, the other guy acts like it's some kind of covert operation. I miss my stop, and I'm scared to get off. Understandably, I get off at the next stop, but before I do, I turn around, and this is in front of lots of people. I don't understand what the fuck everyone else was doing. I say, give me my fucking iPod back, I plead. And I don't understand how the bus driver, hearing what I said, doesn't give a shit. I shouted again. The ghetto white guy, who is beside me, says, get the fuck off the bus. The guy in the back suddenly seems non-existent. I stumble out of the bus. I just ran home crying, and my dad comforts me, and we go out to find them, but we don't succeed. This is something that has caused significant mental health and emotional damage to my life. I developed agoraphobia afterward and struggled to leave the house for a few months. I became resentful, fearful, and mistrusted people. I had severe anxiety issues and still do to this day. I'm even crying now writing it. It was obvious, some kind of gain thing, trying to rob someone to get money for drugs. Just never forget the lack of care or thought everyone else had on that bus.